All right, here we go. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how I figured out how to sing high. In other words, I'm going to describe to you how I went from not being able to sing high to being able to sing high, and what it was that I learned, what it was that I started to do in order to accomplish that. I have to talk to you guys about this concept. I have to explain to you guys what the concept of flageolet tension is. Now, flageolet tension, or flage tension for short, is something that I made up to describe my vocal experience in order to help me discern between different types of sounds I could make. Now, it's important to note that it's not just something I use for myself, but I also use it when I listen to other singers. This helps me fill in the gaps where I don't have other knowledge or other words to explain quite what flageolet tension explains. It's not just something I use for myself. I also use it when I listen to singers, and when people come to me and they describe to me what their vocal goals are or what they're struggling with. I use this concept of flageolet tension if it's useful for the circumstance. This is just a way, and it was my first way of learning how to sing higher. As we go along this video, some of you guys are really gonna already resonate with a lot of the things that I'm saying, and they're gonna make a lot of sense to you. And if so, you're probably already coordinating into your vocal coordination flageolet tension. If this isn't something that resonates with you or works for you, or it isn't the way that you want to sound, then, you know, just leave it be. I also got to say that it took me a really long time to learn how to do something new. I sort of built my voice off of this sound, and when I realized that it wasn't going where I wanted it to go, that my voice didn't sound the way I wanted, and I realized that this tension, this coordination, this technique was a big part of it, I had to work really, really hard in order to not do it. And so that's taken me quite a bit of time in order to learn something new. All right, now let's just jump into this. First, we have to look at the words flageolet and tension separately, right? What is tension? Well, if we think about that, right, I'm talking about a muscular kind of tension. I'm talking about, like, if you hold your arm and you flex your bicep, you can kind of feel, okay, something is tensing there, right? Or if you try to isolate your abs and you flex your abs, something is tensing there, right? Okay, so this is something that's like a big, large muscle, but let's try the neck. Try to, like, tense your neck, right? Try to tense your tongue. Try to tense your lips. Okay, you get the idea. You can sort of tense things and not tense them. Basically, our voice is kind of like an engine, except of running off of, you know, gas or diesel or whatever. We run off of tension and air. So in order for the vocal folds to vibrate and stay together as they're vibrating, we need muscles to come in and bring them together, and also to separate them. So anytime you're making a noise, anytime you're speaking, there's little muscles inside of your throat working to help make that happen. So we already know that there's muscles tensing, right? So what is flageolet tension? Flageolet tension is built off of the word flageolet. So let's think about what that is for a second. Now, I didn't make this word up, okay? I didn't make up flageolet. This is a word that's already used to describe certain sounds. And I would always hear it describing a very particular sound. And this sound sounds a little bit like this. So to me, this is flageolet. Now, it's important to note that there's a big distinction between the sounds that I just made and my falsetto. First, I'm going to start in falsetto, and then I'm going to break into my flageolet. And you're like, that's weird, because if you're already in falsetto, right, if you're just going to more falsetto, why would there be a break? Yeah, that's a good point. So there I'm intentionally exacerbating the difference, much like how I could do with my chest voice and my falsetto. I can also go and pass smoothly between them. What flageolet feels like is like you have your chest, your falsetto, and then your flageolet. You have like another gear, or you have another voice. Imagine falsetto is on top of the chest voice, right? In terms of you're going up pitch, you can only go so high in chest voice. Well, that shift is going to be falsetto. Well, then what happens when you try to drag falsetto up? That shift is going to be flageolet. So, a demonstration. Some of the characters of flageolet are that the sound gets pretty bright, it gets pointy like a laser, it requires less airflow than falsetto. Flageolet feels like a squeak. It just feels like you're barely bringing the vocal folds together and you're using a thimble of air. Compared to falsetto, falsetto feels like it's like you're really using the air. It's requiring more airflow. It requires more movement from your body to expel that airflow, so I feel my abs move more. And just as a test, I'll show you the movement of my abdomen. There's typically more volume on my falsetto and also more air. Now, some of you guys may not even have this flageolet thing, right? Your voice may feel like it gets stuck. Some of you guys are going to feel like, man, I can't do falsetto past D5 or C5, right? I've worked with people like that. You'll feel like it just gets stuck and there's no shifting, right? A very common one is that your top limit for your falsetto is G5. And that's with yanking the volume up and opening your mouth significantly, and often with raising the larynx as well. So pulling up my falsetto, instead of slipping into flageolet, would sound like this. Now, instead, I'm going to negotiate a transition to flageolet. Now, you may be thinking, those sound pretty similar, Greg. One sounds a little quieter, right? Maybe a little thinner, a little more squeaky, but is it really enough to call them different names? Well, I'm going to explain why I separate them in my mental categories for singing. And the reason for that is that when I was first starting to sing, I couldn't go really above G, and my hard falsetto limit was around there. But then there was this weird thing that would sometimes happen when I would try to really push the limits. My voice would kind of like click and like crack over into something. That something started appearing around like B5, and then I got a few more notes, maybe up to like D6 sometimes. And at first, I thought this coordination was actually whistle. Well, eventually I learned it was not whistle. Whistle is when the vocal folds are partially vibrating and they're not making contact along their entire length. In falsetto, or what we can call M2, the vocal folds are actually vibrating along the full length. So it wasn't quite that. And I learned that later because then I was able to produce whistle notes. And I was like, well, this feels pretty distinct. Now, some of you guys are going to have the experience, or girls, of you find that flageolet and it immediately goes to a whistle. And you're like, well, that's weird. Maybe it's just whistle all the way, from the top down. Some of you guys are definitely going to feel like it's very whistle-like. And I agree. It is very whistle-like. And I think just like how chest voice tapers into falsetto eventually, so too does the flageolet turn into whistle when you coordinate it really well. So that's flageolet. Now you're wondering, okay, what is the flageolet tension? All right, well, the flageolet tension comes out of my vocal experience that I realized something was changing inside of here, and I could really feel it like a grip, right? Like imagine like you like this. That's what it feels like. It feels like something turns on that isn't on, right? It's very similar to how if you go and you go from falsetto to chest voice, you kind of feel like, oh, whoa, there's a big shift there. It feels like something clicked on in my throat. You can try this lower if you can't do it very high, but even falsetto, it feels like something's like turning on and activating that wasn't there before. Well, that's exactly the same sense that I get with the flageolet and falsetto. So the tension in flageolet is whatever is sort of activating to shift the gears and to allow my voice to go higher, or to allow me to sing softer up high. I often will use the flageolet tension. You're wondering, how does this make me sing higher in a way that I like? Yeah, I can go and squeak, but how does this actually translate to me singing a song? right? How does this actually translate to me taking the quality of my voice, of my lower voice that you probably like and enjoy, and stretching it up high, right? How does this translate into being able to sing higher without falsetto? Well, what I learned to get my voice higher was that really the coordination that I was building to get my voice to go beyond, let's say, like E or F4, was that I was starting to apply flageolet tension. And you're thinking now, what the heck? How is this thing that I use to coordinate a very high falsetto sound that is a whistly type sound as well, how does that have anything to do with getting above E or F4? The way that I made this connection was that eventually there wasn't a gap between my falsetto and that high flageolet sound. Eventually they just started to sort of blur together, and I was able to bring the flageolet down. So they would sound something like this. And I was able to bring the flageolet into a range where I was never able to bring it before, into my falsetto range, and then eventually even into my chest voice range. So what I noticed was it was very distinct from my falsetto. Very, very, very distinct. I would drag that down. And I would notice this feels completely like a whole separate voice. Again, just like feel like two different things. So does this and they feel very, very different. So what I began to also notice was that my quiet chest voice was the flageolet sound. Now you're saying, what the heck? How is quiet chest voice flageolet? Well, let me give you a bit of a demonstration. So you're probably noticing the character of the sound is changing a little bit, right? But it's still not quite a chesty sound. But what happens if I just press on that sound? I actually end up making my way back to chest voice. Okay, well, what if I back off that sound? I've ended up right back in flageolet land. So what's the glue that sort of holds my chest voice and my flageolet together on the continuum like that? Well, that's the tension. So what I do is I just hold that squeeze and I hold that tension, and I just try to go back to chest voice. Now, when I first tried doing any of this, it completely failed. It took me a long time, guys, just to get the flageolet to actually go lower in pitch, because at first it was... It was like this. It was like a splintery transition. It cracked, it jumped notes. I didn't have A5, B flat 5. I skipped a couple notes because I literally had nothing that would go in between there. Falsetto wouldn't go that high and the flageolet wouldn't go that low. So the step number one was to bring that sound lower and to learn how to do that. Now, I didn't only do that. What the other things I did was I actually practiced strengthening my chest voice a lot. And when it first started happening, I didn't realize that it was connected to the flageolet, right? I didn't realize that this new thing I was feeling was this flageolet tension that was sort of holding it together and making my voice have this sort of unity from bottom to top. And it's also important to note that this does not happen for everybody. Some people learn to sing in chest voice and they never engage the flageolet tension. It's not an automatic process. It's not guaranteed. Number one, if you can do the flageolet, that's awesome. Drag it lower. That's going to be your best bet. It would sound maybe something like this. Where you've got a very thin sound and it's splintery, but you just try to make it bigger, right? Try to increase it. Try to make it more voluminous, okay? So you could open your mouth. And even if it's shaky and it flickers, right, that's still a good start. And then the next thing you can do is try to get it to go a little bit louder. Now, there's certain vowels that are going to work better for this and ones that aren't going to work well. Ooh, e, closed vowels, stuff where your mouth is more narrow, right? Or even just shut, or your tongue is up, e, blocking off the space in your mouth. I would say stay away from those. I would say that as you're trying to actually grow the whistle or the very tiny flageolet into something else, or rather back to chest voice, or turn it into a belt or a mix, whatever you want to call it, you're going to want to find a vowel that works. So I like a, I like ah or ah, right? So those are sort of my go-tos. The more open, the better. What else? What if you don't have the flageolet? What if you're one of those people that goes, woo, ah, and you're stuck, right? You're ah, you can't get past that point. There's no little click or flip. Ah, there's nothing like that for you, okay? What do you do then? One of the things you can do is the magic creak exercise. So what is a creak? Frankly, a creak is like a vocal fry. That's probably the word you're gonna hear the most to describe this type of sound. Now I just call this creaking because that's what they call it at the Complete Vocal Institute. What do you do with the creaking? Well, first of all, let's just play around with finding it in a couple of different ways. Oh, there's a truck out there, and I'm going, it's going, Here we go again. So let's just experiment with a couple of ways to find the creak. And once you find this, I want you to play around with taking the creak lower in pitch and higher in pitch. Helps to have a piano. So you can hear I am going lower and lower with that vocal fry, right? With that creak. And it is also, then if I'm going lower, possible to raise the pitch of it, right? And you can barely really tell that I'm going So that's step number one. Mess around with actually getting the creak to raise and lower the pitch. Now, let's see if we can get the creak to actually raise even higher. Now, what's going to happen to most of us is we're going to go like this. It's just going to turn back into your chest voice because why? Well, the creak, it doesn't naturally want to go up high, right? It's not a very standard thing that you would do with your voice, right? So it's going to feel a little bit foreign and like, this is new. That's good. So let's see if we can't get the creak is actually raising in pitch. Now, it's not about pitch precision with this exercise. It's really just about getting the sensation of pitches going low to high, and I'm not going That is to say, I'm not going back to chest voice. I'm trying to keep it in that creaky zone. So I act as if I'm going to go but instead of allowing my voice to release back into chest voice, I clamp it down with that creak. All right, so once you get the hang of this, what you want to do is you want to see how high can I drag my creak. So you want to start making some sounds like that. Now, normally you would think, oh man, I would want to let that go, right? I don't want to, keep going very high. And usually when people start doing this exercise, I've found that they suck at it, right? And that they need to practice engaging this little creaky tension. Keep going. Now you may notice I'm opening my mouth. Why am I opening my mouth, right? Well, I'm really trying to think that the pitch is going way up there, right? I'm thinking, da. I'm really imagining, I'm trying to do the pitch, but I'm stopping it, right? So I can't just fake it, right? I've got to actually go for that note and counter that with the creak. So there's a big transition when you're doing the creak lower to when you're doing the creak higher. Something sort of shifts. And what I feel is that there is some kind of tension getting applied in order to allow that creak to even go up. Because if I don't apply that tension or that hold to my voice right there, then I'll just go back to a chest voice. Now, if I hold that back and I apply that tension in order to let the creak go higher, it works. After you've gotten this down, the next step is try to get a sound to kind of squeak or pop out of your vocal fry. This may have already happened as you've been practicing along with me, and you may be like, whoa, what's that little squeak? So let's now try to get a little bit of noise coming through that creak. So you can probably hear that there's a sound emerging there that isn't just the sound. So you want that. You want to kind of maintain that creak plus add some sound to it, right? Or think it's got the creak and then I'm adding my normal voice. Now I suggest aiming for something super duper high and try to get a squeak out, right? Try to make it as light and thin as possible. Don't make huge moves from that's a letting go of that creaky tension. So let's try again. When you're ready, move on to that phase where you actually try to get a note to come out and then go right back to the creak. So you don't go and then where's the creak, right? Make sure that the sound that is coming out is a sound that is coordinated in a continuous way with the creak. What does that mean? That means that you could go right back to the creak. If I go, I've kind of let it go, right? I don't have the creak tension anymore, and now I have to reapply it. Don't let go, you won't have to reapply. It's just right there sort of waiting for me to squeeze enough to get that creak to come back on. So once you can get this, I would say try to stretch it higher and stretch it lower, wherever it works for you, right? Try the high notes, try the low notes. And again, it's okay if it's kind of a splintery mess. That is normal at first. So, what if this isn't working? All right, fair enough. Let's try doing the creaky tension, but instead of emerging in something like falsetto or M2, let's emerge in something that's actually M1 or a chest voice. So there you can kind of hear that chest voice is kind of tight, right? It's kind of got this squeezed sound to it, right? And the reason it does is because I'm keeping that creaky tension. Now, some of y'all have already guessed and figured it out. The creaky tension is the same thing as the flageolet tension, right? If I bring the flageolet down low enough, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run into a creak. Ooh. Now, the fact that that creak is just there when I drag the flageolet lower is one of the reasons that I had a big problem with this sound and why I eventually wanted to learn how to use my voice in a different way. So one of the downsides that I was experiencing was I would slide, let's say, from a chest voice that was coordinated with the flageolet tension, and that would end up giving me sort of a creaky sound right around A3 or G3 or F3, somewhere around there in my range. So I would do something like this, right? And you hear it was kind of janky passing through that. Do you hear that creak at the end? A little bit of noise in the sound, right? Well, that is because I'm going from having the flageolet tension to letting it go. So if you're experiencing some of those signs where you go up in your chest voice and... Sorry, my dogs are loud. So if you experience some of these signs where you go up in your chest voice and you feel like something shifts and you've got a tighter, maybe a bit of a squeakier sound, the airflow has reduced drastically, that's a sign that you may be coordinating with the flageolet tension. if you're getting some kind of a creaking problem or in your voice, especially in the passaggio for men, somewhere from C, or B3 to, F4, anywhere, in this general area, you get some kind of creak like you can kind of hear mine right there, right? As opposed to then that's a sign you're using the flageolet tension, and it's just miscoordinating slightly, so you're getting that creak. Now, what's cool about this technique is that it allows you to sing super high. It feels controllable. Having something to squeeze or to sort of grab onto is really effective as a way to sort of trust and maneuver your voice around those pitches, so it doesn't feel like you don't know what you're doing. So in addition to doing the creaky exercise, I would say it also helps to make sure you're going to navigate to a coordination that's going to let the vocal folds stretch more. So this kind of translates into what vowel we pick that we practice on. So the more closed your vowel, the more you're going to be getting the vocal folds stretching. That's just sort of the way the cookie is crumbling. So if we're practicing this and we go with a really open or o or ah, this is not going to be the best way to try to get this coordination to click on. So for me, what I did early on when I was learning to sing high was I did a lot of like rounded stuff. So when I would do my I would go ah. I would always make sure my lips were rounded. I stayed away from a smile position. Even when I did o, it's like oh in the top, not oh, right? Or was not So doing those things, like aiming your vowels in this more rounded direction, is going to be a way to help it coordinate better than on the open way. So I'm going to give you guys some demos of using the flageolet tension as I go up to get higher, and then not using it. And I'll point out which is which. Now, I'll demonstrate using some vowel shapes that really, really work well with the flageolet tension. Ooh, ee, Basically, the more closed something is, the better applicable flage tension is as a technique for me. The more open something is, the more I can step away from that and not use the flageolet tension. Alright guys, so I hope this video was helpful for you. If you liked it, please like this video, comment below if you guys have any questions, subscribe to my channel if you want to see future stuff. I plan on doing a lot more videos and talking about a lot of more stuff.